here today on Conscious Business Zone with Michael Orwig. Hi, Michael. How are you?
Good. Good morning.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're here. So, everyone, the reason why I wanted you to meet Michael is he's doing some profound work and want you to know about all the cool stuff he does anyway. But Michael and I met because we met through Richard. Yeah, doing light work. And then I was just fascinated with everything he's done. Michael, I'm going to read a little bit so you know, and then we'll turn it over to him. Michael Orwig is an international speaker and author with an MA in hypnotherapy. He also, if you read his full resume, he has a degree in mathematics and psychology from Duke and a master's degree in mind-based medicine and hypnotherapy from Quantum University. A former 747 captain, he has traveled the world connecting and healing the subtle energy grids of our planet. Pretty cool, huh? Don't think there's that many pilots that know how to do that. So Michael, tell us. I'm not going to read your whole thing, but I am going to show your book in a little bit. See, but I'll show it again in a little bit. But Michael, how did you wake up to all of this? Because obviously, you had a different awareness than the guy who was your co-pilot.
Most of, I'd say my awakening started in the early 90s, and started doing more healing work. It was hands-on healing work was where a lot of my awakening started with Reiki, as a lot of people did back then. The big part of the expansive awakening happened in the late 90s, early 2000. And that was where basically anything and everything in my life changed. And I started exploring all of our much more esoteric understandings, started back 20, 21 years ago with that one. But my early awakening started before that. But I've always been connected with the earth energies. That's been a lifelong thing. But as you were showing my book about the children information started coming in around 2006.
Okay.
So that's been about a 13-year path with the children's information. But I've been working with the subtle energies of the earth grid, and all of that for more lifetimes than I can imagine. I mean, I've seen some as far back as 250,000 years, but it's been an interesting, it really is two separate lifetimes rolled into one, and I'm not the only one that can say that. Many of us can. We were normal, and then all of a sudden, around age 40, different things started kicking in, and just like for me, that happened in the early 90s was where most of mine started.
Okay. Well, so how does somebody that you're a great example of a bridge maker where you can walk in both worlds, and you can have your uniform on and go to work and fly a plane, but you can also do dowsing or energy work on grids. Whoops, I think there's a little feedback. There we go. Okay, but you can do both. So how did you juggle that? Did you have to do a lot of meditation, or?
I'd say it's a gift that I naturally had, and I've always been a gifted speaker, and I've always had a strong, even though I'm a nice Virgo, I had a strong Libra side, which does the balance. And I've always been mindful of what I'm telling someone, even though I naturally like to push the boundaries. I'd like to try to find out where they're coming from.
Right.
And with my many different first officers that I had over the years flying for United, I did the international routes, and you'd have 10 hours to sit, and he had to sit there and he couldn't go anywhere. And you talk about all kinds of subjects, and that talent of being able to find where someone's at and
Yeah.
talk about some of the different things was always something I loved to do. And yes, there would be some flights when you find out, oh shit, this is going to be pretty boring. And we talk about how the Broncos did this last Sunday or
Super.
whatever, and that would be with a standard mundane conversation. But with the awakening planetary wide, it's fascinating to see how many people are further along than we really recognize. But it's kind of like being they're closet metaphysical people, but they want to hide in society and hide behind the church or whatever and whatever. But if you ask the right questions, you'd be surprised how open and aware a lot of people are because it's tied into mass consciousness.
Right, right, right. Well, and I'm finding people are waking up at such a level now that they're open to those conversations. And 20 years ago, they may not have been
Yeah,
quite
exactly.
open. Right. So your process, you went from feeling that you had actually a full purpose, right? And that you were on assignment. It wasn't just your regular job, you had this other job, but you also had kids that you saw were unique, or that they had special gifts that you didn't want to squish. You didn't want to put them through. Yeah, that's what Susie Jones says, closet metaphysical. I love this. So anyway, I want to bring up the book again because this is one of the things that I just love that Michael's done. And it's called The Quantum Children. It's the second in a series of three books that he's written. The first book was on education and why we need reform. And this second book is about his interviews with using his hypnotherapy technique, which is called QHHT, which hopefully he'll tell us some more about, and what insights he got into these amazing epiphanies that came through when people were under. So, Michael, tell us about this whole journey. You started out with your children, realizing your children were very, very gifted, and you didn't want them to get put through the system, right?
Well, all of my kids are very intuitive.
Okay.
And I was fortunate that my ex wife, we were divorced 20 years ago, but she was open. So, unlike a couple that has one that's done their awakening and one that hasn't and holds things back, both of us had kind of gone through our awakenings in that early 90s. And in the late 90s, early 2000, when I would study a particular modality, healing hands modality, or have work done on me by a practitioner, I would allow the kids to do that.
Oh, cool.
If I did a reading, I'd let the kids do a reading. And within that, when I learned how to use a pendulum and start trying to work with my own inner guidance, I taught my kids the exact same time frame. So we were both learning at the same time. And my whole main premise within my kids in that regard was if they're tapping into their own inner guidance, I let go of control.
Right.
My youngest is 31 now. They're all in their 30s, and my son just turned 40. The question I have for them, if they've got something going on life-wise, is, well, what are you getting? What's your guidance around it? It's not immediately throwing in my projection.
Perfect.
And it's something that I'm passionate about, that I would love to see taught in school, is just tapping into your own inner guidance. If that was done from the get-go, all of the society's ability to condition someone to manipulate the populace falls away.
Right.
And that was always and has been one of my strongest things around these books. Now, one of the fun stories I had from years ago
Uh-huh.
in my awakening, the first reading I had, the lady practitioner would draw a tree with a pencil.
Oh,
And as she sketches the tree, she called it a tree of life,
uh-huh.
she would see things, images would
Uh-huh.
appear in this pencil sketch. And she gets up to the upper right hand parts and says, "Oh, I see here you've got 3, 4 books at least that you're going to write." Well, being a math guy, I was math, engineering. My English writing and training was all very left brained. And I'm going, what in the world are you drinking over there, girl? Because I could not care less about English and writing
Right.
coming through the normal education system. And it wasn't long after that I discovered for the first time more stream of consciousness or channel writing, that kind of thing. And it was at that point in time that I knew that I could, in fact, write something worth reading, not just write something for the sake of writing. And the first book in 2005 was about the subtle energies of the earth. And it was 2 years after that, around '07, '08, was when I started getting information about the children. And I started compiling a lot of it. And it's kind of been it's taken a life of its own as I rewrote that blue book that you were showing. I rewrote that 4 times.
Oh my gosh.
So
Oh my
this was the first book. It took me 8 years, and the finished version was I focused on both the history of the shifts of all of these new children coming in, and then happy and healthy. Those were my two main thoughts with all the rest of the chapters. And this book won a silver with the Covr Awards in 2016 in the health and healing category. My main focus there is how do thoughts create? We're creator beings. So I did an entire section, and this isn't taught to the kids.
Right.
And you go, why? We are creators, we are manifestors. Why
Because,
isn't that taught at every level?
but the system isn't really created to have them be wildly expressive. It's created to have a um, a mechanized society that can work in factories. And hopefully, what we're doing, you and I, and a group of us, is we're working on other paradigm solutions that'll help people create a new kind of education that does more what you're doing, gears more to people coming out with their skills and their gifts being accessible and usable right away rather than squished, right?
Well,
So,
the current education system is set up only for academia.
right,
And to me, academia represents maybe 2 to 5% of the human genius. And 10 years ago, we've said many times, I've heard it said that the current jobs today, uh, what, 70% of them didn't exist 10 years ago, that kind of thing. And yet we as parents want to project what the kids should do as if we know what the future is like in 10 years from now. No,
no,
we're building this timeline. And if I was to have a child today at
oh
age
my
65,
God. George
uh,
Burns,
I'll talk to Lynn about that first, perhaps. But no, I mean, what do we want? We want children that are flexible, adaptable in a changing environment. Of anything that's going on right now, it's change. And the only one that can get the truest, most accurate information about my heart's path, my soul's guidance is me.
right,
And so teaching kids from the earliest age how to do that is hugely important, as well as to see our biases and see where we're conditioned. I
Right.
mean, and it's a lot of what I talk about within the education system. And I realize structure is not, doesn't want to do that. Structure
Well,
wants to tell them what to think, when to think, and how to think it.
well, the thing is that again, if the goal post is that just to have people being able to get good test scores and not actually being able to use the functionality and be vibrant contributors to society, then that's the paradigm that needs to change. What there's actually Zach's writing a bunch. He put writing is like the life of a glacier, one eternal grind, and that was from John Muir. And then he wrote there's nothing stopping anyone from living the new paradigm right now. The educators can individually foster creativity. So he's going through that. He thinks that's the in the he taught at CU. He's a physicist, and etc. But I think what he's saying is, yeah, let's do it now. But there's not enough of the powers that be that are allowing that. So I think we're on a process. We have to create a process where that is creates a win-win for the system.
And
Where
to me, the number one teacher are the parents. And
exactly
that's a lot of my target. Yes, the educators can, on an individual basis, create some of that creativity, and they have for years and years.
right.
But the structure in general tends to hold them back. But
Right.
a lot of my focus is to help parents recognize that they are modeling 24/7 for their family, and creating the awareness of the shift. They can't play the old paradigms and expect there not to be an effect on these kids. In essence, pulling them back from the high vibration that they are, maybe not fully back to the older paradigms, but you're still holding these kids back instead of the parent moving forward. And that's where a lot of the focus that I have comes in.
Well, we've got a couple responses here. We've got Elsie says she agrees with Zach, so I'll read a little more of what he said. And Cheryl Stegman's here too. And Cheryl Stegman is a Rudolf Steiner expert and has had a daycare that she did for like 20 years. And so she's really into the artistic expression. Okay, so he's saying, Zach said, I taught example like Mandelbrot fractals and space gaming instead of the usual boring computational programming. And of course, the students loved it because I allowed them to express creatively and use the computer for what it was good at. The tool is not the artist, and we have more and more tools now. And then Elsie also wrote, I also agree with Michael about the structure. Awareness and lack of fear can be first steps within the system. Right? Mm-hmm. Right. So thank you all for your comments. It's really adding a lot of information and a lot of thought processes that we can explore here, because we're not just talking about we're talking about the responsibility of the parent as well as the school to educate, and we're talking about the parents being aware enough to want to bring out the divine being that those children are, and let them express it any way they want. And as a parent, that is one of the most interesting. You're just on the sideline. You do the best you can for the first 7 years, and then the rest of it, you just, right?
Well, if you think of it, so much of it's conditioned by society. And that's most people, once again, that's an awareness.
Right.
If everything my mother and my dad did up to age 7 was encoded into my subconscious
Of course.
directly.
Right.
And then when I had kids, yeah, magically those patterns come back out. My mother was born in the 30s. You think some things maybe have changed since then, and yet
Yeah.
you're all of a sudden you've got a child and you go, oh my God, I sound like my mother, or I sound like dad, or whatever.
Yeah.
And these patterns come out, but we are changing at such a speed. We're bringing in fifth density children from around the cosmos are coming in for lifetimes. And I haven't raised a fifth density child from the very get go.
No.
And we're all starting, in essence, kind of playing blind leading the blind. And we still teach school in many ways the same way it was taught back when I went through school, in much the same. And I don't mean that there aren't some level of differences that have come out, but we still teach competition. We still have grades. I would get rid of all of that. And I know that drives some people crazy. The thought of getting rid of grades.
Yeah.
What's wrong with getting rid of all levels of fear?
Right. Exactly.
You know, and we are these incredible learning machines. We love to learn.
Right.
And what most people don't understand is everything that I'm to do in my lifetime is coded at the silicon level of my cells. And I naturally would open up to want to learn the things that basically my soul is triggering for me.
Right.
And so the structure of education, where it says you must learn this now in this modality, in this method, goes against that.
Right. Right.
And grades, if you're good in a class, grades are great. Oh, I feel great. I'm smart. But it's been shown that grades are based on speed, and speed is not knowledge, it's not wisdom. It's just a particular skill set that some people have. But in the Khan Academy, they found that the fast starters in a particular subject were not necessarily the best in the subject. That slow starters could catch up and surpass.
Could you talk a little bit about the academy? That because I don't know that my audience has
Okay.
experience with it.
In my studies, I loved Khan, Kahn. Sal Khan is his first name. And Sal, in around 2006, he worked with Wall Street out of Boston. He was a hedge fund analyst. That was what it was. And over the 4th of July lunch, he was having lunch in Boston with his cousins up from New Orleans. And one of them was extraordinarily bright. And then he finds out she's having problems in math, and he starts tutoring her. Okay. One thing leads to another, and he's tutoring 12 cousins over Skype. And a friend of his says, why don't you just video it and put it up on YouTube?
Oh, cool.
And that was how it started. He started doing math lessons, putting them up on YouTube. And 3-4 years later, he had something like 30,000 whatever up there. And it got traction around the world. Bill Gates' son was using his material.
Wow.
And Google got involved, and they kicked in about 17 million. Wow. And he was able to hire full-time people to upgrade the website and everything else. And it became the Khan Academy. And it's one of the largest, if not the largest, free education material to anyone in the world. It originated with math, but it's gone through all of the subjects. They have, I think, something in the range of 20, 25 different languages that volunteers take the material and do it. But in the studies with that particular material, using his lessons, in other words, where a child can look at an algebra lesson as many times as they wanted, when they wanted, and then go to class and talk about it with the teacher, it
Oh,
flipped the paradigm. Instead of being the sage on the stage and this is the lesson for the day, each child could be at the pace that they wanted to be. And the teacher could see where all of the different kids were and could help them specifically in math, let's just say in math, where they were at. And it took it away from being a time based to this is the material, whatever it takes to allow you to learn the material. And we all learn in different ways. I'm very kinesthetic. And as a pilot, I'm given flight manuals that have 7,000 pages of material
wow.
that a single paragraph could be an important thing I have to remember.
Oh my God.
But if you give me a simulator and the switches and the lights and everything that I can work with, I can then understand the system so much better than trying to read a paragraph out of this flight manual and create an image in my mind. Where many of us are kinesthetic, but how do we teach in school?
Yeah.
We teach primarily
Memorization,
verbal, visual, maybe with the teacher, but it's still primarily verbal.
right?
How do we get the hands-on portion? And that's the hard part. That's always been a hard part.
Right.
That some of the alternative schools you mentioned, like the Rudolf Steiner, and many of them are much better at getting the hands-on portion in there. But if you took time out of the equation and competition out of the equation,
Right.
and changed it to cooperation,
Perfect.
oh my goodness, what I mean, it's like night and day. And all of the stuff we see in school, the bullying and all of that, believe it or not, a lot of it has to do with self-image, self-love with these young adults, and the competition that's overlaid.
Right.
If there's no competition and it's all cooperation, that whole dynamic changes overnight.
Right.
But that's not how the structure's set up, and it is what it is.
Yeah. So Steve O'Brien put, ideally, teachers are empowered by the support the parents of their students provide their children. So he's agreeing with you that the parents are a key to help the teachers do a better job.
It is. But I would love to see more flexibility to allow the student to choose any subject he wants and not choose a subject they want. And that's the part that I'm sure people would have more of a trouble of, oh my goodness, he needs this. Believe it or not, as a learning soul, you will find a way to learn what you need to learn.
Right.
And that's a point that they don't take in. Well, he's not motivated. Well, he's not motivated to learn what you're trying to get him to learn. That doesn't mean he's not motivated in some fashion. And like with the ADD-HD kids, we say, well, they can't focus. Well, you give them something they really enjoy, you watch them focus.
Yeah, that's obvious. And it said, Zach saying takes a village. I wanted to go back real quick, Michael, to talk about the QHHT work that you do, if you don't mind. I think we could benefit from that knowledge as well. I don't know that all the listeners know about Dolores Cannon's work and how you got involved with that, but could you address that a little bit, because that's how you gathered the information?
Actually, for volume 2, which was the red one.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. Volume one was right. Health and Happy.
Okay.
Volume 2 is the red one that I used more case studies with.
all along I thought I had the right volume. I thought that was volume 2.
Well, Mike could run upstairs and grab my copy and show it.
No, it's all right. Sorry about that.
Volume 2 has a reddish magenta cover. Other than that, it's the exact same.
Okay.
And it's more story driven. And what I would do was use the hypnosis to connect with a mother's higher self and use the mother as a surrogate to get information about the kids. So let's just say in our example, let's say, Kathy, you were one of our case studies and you had 2 kids, one's 9 and one's 15.
Okay.
In the hypnosis, we would go in and allow what I call the superconscious to guide us to what we want to see.
Okay.
And so, unlike many types of hypnosis where you're saying, well, I want to do a regression and look at this one thing, we allow the superconscious to run the show.
Okay.
Superconscious knows what material I want. It knows what material the mother needs to hear about the kids. And our higher self, the superconscious, knows everything about Michael.
Right.
It knows everything about Kathy, every lifetime, the different patterns, where I've struggled, where I haven't struggled, on down the line. And we jump down the rabbit hole. And when I would do an interview with a mother, and many of them were psychics, they were good friends of mine. I wanted highly intuitive mothers that could recognize empathic children and how they worked. I wanted to get the interview information on how they worked with their kids growing up. Because 90% of the kids coming in today are highly empathic. They feel everything.
Right, right.
And so most of the case studies I used were highly empathic women, and we went in about their kids. And then I wanted to see, well, what group was, let's say John is 9, and what group is really John coming in as? Is he indigo? Is he a crystal child? Is he a rainbow child? Is he a star seed? What genius, what gifts is he bringing in? Anything along those lines that would help the mother in determining a little bit about his soul's path so that she could support him. That was really where I was going. It was all about what kind of information. Now, if a mother had a 2-year-old, you're not going to get college information when it's a 2-year-old. It ain't going to happen. But I would like to try to find out the sensitivities that the child had.
Right.
What toxins maybe are really highly triggered for a particular child.
Okay.
What type of environment would really support, them? And when you start these kinds of sessions, I may do 5 hypnosis sessions with a single mother and 5 interviews. I'd have 100 pages of transcripts of material.
Wow.
And the better the mother was as an intuitive, you could get some incredible information about why the child came in. Let me just throw one example.
Great.
This particular mother at age 23 got pregnant by a rebound boyfriend.
Uh-oh.
And as all of you will go, oh God, whatever.
Oops.
And 2 years later, or a year and a half, about 2 years later, she married the husband she has now.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Now, she was going through a custody thing at the year and a half point with this daughter, and the current husband came in and kind of had been an old boyfriend and kind of came in and did the white knight routine and married her.
Yeah.
And then they subsequently had another daughter. So she has one daughter from rebound guy, one daughter from current husband. And in the hypnosis, I basically asked the superconscious, why did, and I have to go back and remember her name, why did Casey come in through John here, the rebound guy, instead of waiting as a soul to come in through the husband. And we got an entire download piece that, first of all, rebound guy, even though he was abusive, was a higher vibration than the husband.
Wow.
The husband was very military and very much tied in with the church. Now, many in our society would say, oh, well, that's a good thing. No, that's very much tied in with structure and older vibration. The rebound guy came from a family that was very flexible, and oh God, what was it? There was another piece that was part of it, that problem solving was the part.
Oh,
They were problem solvers, and she wanted that piece coming from that lineage.
Wow.
And it kind of completely debunked all of our conditioning around, oh, this was just a pregnancy that happened
Right.
per chance or whatever. No, there were a lot of soul level things going on behind the scenes that triggered this particular pregnancy for her to come in through this guy. She still came in through her mother and was raised by her mother as an intuitive, empathic young woman.
Right.
But when you find information around that behind the scenes stuff of, there's a lot more going on here, and that's a lot. Every one of my stories has something like that.
Right.
One of the women I interviewed and did the hypnosis with had a lifetime as a moon.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. So you explored, okay, what was that like? We played with that. And there are frequencies that she carries from that lifetime that were 6-dimensional frequencies.
Oh, beautiful.
That she can infuse into supplements and other products to help people with their shifts.
Wow.
That if she chose. And she'd been an alchemist in one lifetime, and they'd done the gold routine.
Oh, Elsie's putting, not so sure the parents really understand who their children are.
No, they don't.
Right.
And one child, the lifetime we were shown was a different planet, and it was the image I was given was kind of a shapeshifter. It was a humanoid, but it could take on aquatic features at the same time. In other words, shift into an aquatic. It was very much an aquatic planet. And this particular individual traveled around the planet communicating different things that were only found in their area where he was from. And sure enough, it was that communication piece that he brought back into this lifetime.
Wow.
that he was to experience. We had one child that we thought was a star seed. They said he's an earth angel. Okay. What exactly? I mean, if someone says Kathy is an earth angel, we would go, we know Kathy's an angel. Yes, we know that. But still, when spirit or the superconscious says that, we have to get away from our
interpretation.
Exactly, and try to get exactly to the point of what is exactly, why are they telling us that in that form, and how would it help to have a better understanding of what he's doing. He's 15 now.
Wow.
He's already written a novel.
Wow.
He wants to, if you think of an angelic that's having a physical lifetime, that he wants to explore everything. And he's got a connection with Tesla. He's a brilliant young man, but he's gotten into writing now, and he's already written a novel, and
wow.
I mean, he just explores all kinds of things that you would expect someone maybe that had 3 doctorates in their 30s are exploring, and he's doing it at age 15.
Wow.
And he's off the charts. His father is a PhD in molecular biology, and his mother's a working psychic. And and I mean, it's an incredible thing to look at when you go into, well, a lot of what I do is past life wise. Well, and you go, okay, I don't suppose we're going to see any past lives with an angelic. And you go, no. So I had to do a whole different tact and try to see what other kind of information, different ways we could find out about what he wants to do here. And
so I have a question for you. That's from me, not from the audience, but we're getting. Thank you, audience, for any of your comments and questions. These terms that we use, starseed, it's like millennial. We categorize people. How accurate are they? I mean, are they just like a generalization, like any label, or are you finding? Oh, okay.
We label generations by about a 20-year window, give or take.
Right.
And that's okay. That just really, more than anything else, it just says when you were born.
Right.
But what Spirit showed me was that we actually come in soul groups, in groups of about a 7-year window, and they overlap. So much like a Vesca Pisces, that there's that overlap. You'd have one 7-year group, but it's overlapped by another 7-year group. And so the groupings of the soul level groups coming in are a much smaller level, but because the differences aren't as large, we don't recognize it as much. But in any group, you have front runners. Martin Luther King, as an example, was a front runner, but he didn't come to power until his main soul group came to power.
Okay.
He was an early runner. Many from our generation, Kathy, are the early comers of the light workers coming in, and we have our path.
Is that Dolores Cannon calls this the first wave or whatever? Yeah.
She saw it as 3 waves, but Spirit basically, for me, kind of narrowed it down that yes, you could see it as that, but yes, really the soul groups come in much smaller windows coming in, and then they find ways of finding themselves, as we have, and many of your friends, and find themselves within the groups now. With certainly the internet and everything else allows us to find our soul groups much easier than was in the past. But one of the things I was asked to avoid doing is the labeling. And so I chose the name The Quantum Children, not to give it a different name, but actually more of an umbrella.
I see.
You could look at 2 different ways of looking at this. Anyone that is set up for oneness consciousness, unity consciousness, is a quantum child.
Right.
Okay, that's where I really got the term from, was being connected to all things.
Okay.
You could also use it certainly for the newest children coming in, those from 2010, 2012, that big shift window that was occurring to now. You could also use it for them because all of them are set up for unity consciousness.
Right.
And that's where I chose that, instead of trying to come up with another set of names for different things.
Okay. Well, that's what, when you said star children and all of that, I mean, so much of that was out maybe 30 years ago. They started talking about it, and are you a walk-in? Are you a starseed? And all of that. And it was like, yeah, I can answer yes to every question, but that's not it. That's not what I am. So that's why I was wondering how accurate any of those.
Well, then there's combinations. I carry energies of a crystal child, but most of the crystal children didn't really start coming in except for over the last 20 years. But I very much have a strong crystal energy within myself. I've had my lifetimes on other planets. In fact, I would hazard to guess there is not a single person on this planet that has only had lifetimes here on Earth.
Wow.
I would bet you that everyone has had lifetimes somewhere else on a soul level,
Okay.
and we are cosmic beings
Right.
that just happen to be here for the shift right here and now. And it's it opens your mind up,
Right.
awareness wise, to really the
Possible.
universality, cosmic nature of the soul, and what it can do. And it's pretty amazing, and you find when you chase down when you do choose to chase down the rabbit hole.
Well, what I love about you, again, I'm going to wrap it up with this, that you are a bridge to that expanded view of unity consciousness and the capability to do big things in a big way using the energy of the universe, like I think we were intended, as well as be in 3D and fully functioning and assisting others and being a good parent and a good husband and still teacher and great teacher. And Michael, how would you like people? I've been putting your website up. I'd like people that if they want to learn more from you or have a QHHT session, or if they want to buy your books, I want that to make sure that they can get a hold of you. How would be, I put your website up. Is there other ways that?
Oh, we'll give them my phone number and the email.
Okay.
Obviously, easiest with email, but you can always text me on my phone number too. But it's crystalfalcon747@gmail.com and 720-979-6333
For a
for the
good
phone
time,
number.
call that number. No. Just kidding. That's a joke. That's a joke. I'll tell you the story about that sometime. But anyway, what Michael is still teaching is through teaching pilots how to fly. So he does that, as well as he has time to write these books. He does great interviews. He's building a channel with amazing interviews of amazing beings. He's working on products. So I'm so glad that you had the time to spend with us today so that more people could learn about your work and get a chance to see that you may be a great guide for them on this exploration here.
And if I can throw one thing out on my website, which is the michaelorwig.com, my expansion past the books is for me doing interviews, as Kathy mentioned. And so what I'm trying to do is now do interviews with as many different subjects that expand my material. So it's not just about me or whatever, but it's about any subject that I think would be a benefit to the parent with the shifts in consciousness.
Right.
Certainly parenting from new paradigms, but whatever it may be, health, healing, education. I love talking about some of the topics around autism.
Right.
And how some of the healing can be done. And it's about giving parents more tools than what they've been conditioned to see.
Right.
And
Fabulous.
I've got about 40 videos up on the site so far this year, and we'll keep doing more.
Yeah, it's great. Well, Elsie's wrote, thank you both, loved it. So thank you, Michael, so much. And I hope everyone, I'll be sharing this all over the place. And I also put the video back up on YouTube afterwards. So I hope that you'll take a chance and spend 20 minutes on Michael's site, maybe longer, and see if this is the road to your higher capacity to remember who you are and bring it in, because we need it now.
Okay. Kathy, thank you for having me, my dear.
My pleasure. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Bye, everybody. Thank you, Michael.